Have you ever wondered, what lies beyond death? What if someone crossed that line and came back with an urgent message straight from Jesus about events that will shake the world in June 2025? Get ready, because in today's video you'll hear the shocking story of Lucas Miller, an ordinary man who died for 9 minutes and came back with a frightening revelation about 4 supernatural signs that are about to happen and that will divide the history of humanity into before and after. The spiritual clock is ticking, and you need to hear this before it's too late. So leave your like, subscribe to the channel, activate the bell so you don't miss any videos, and comment below which city or country you're watching us from, so I know how far this message is reaching. Get ready, because what you're about to hear on Dayer will change everything. My name is Lucas Miller. I have 41 years old. I'm from Texas, more exactly from Austin, and I never imagined that my life could end like this. I was always skeptical. I didn't believe in anything beyond what my eyes could see. Religion, heaven, life after death. I always thought it was something for weak, deluded, or desperate people, until the day when my heart just stopped. It was a morning like any other. Monday, April 14th, 2025. I left home late, coffee in hand, cell phone ringing nonstop, hellish traffic. Everything was absolutely normal. Until, in the middle of an intersection, I felt something I had never felt before. A dry, direct pain, as if someone had stuck an iron bar in the middle of my chest. My arms tingled, my vision blurred, and suddenly, silence. I don't know how to explain what happened. 1 second I was inside my car, with horns and engines screaming in my ears, and the next everything went white. It wasn't a white of light, it was emptiness, no color, no sound, no time. I knew I was dead. And the worst part? I felt everything. There was no tunnel. There were no angels singing. What there was an infinite field of consciousness, as if I had stepped out of the game and was now looking at the entire board from the outside. And that's when he appeared. Not walking, not floating, just was there. A presence so strong that my soul almost disintegrated just by noticing it. I didn't see a man with a beard, a tunic, or sandals. I saw light. I saw truth. I saw love and authority blended into one essence. It was Jesus, and he knew who I was. Everything, every thought, every mistake, every unspoken regret. Before I could ask anything, he spoke, not with words, but straight into my consciousness, as if my entire soul were an ear. The clock is ticking, Lucas, and you're going to witness it. It was then, out of nowhere, a series of images began to form in front of me. They weren't blurred visions. They were not symbols that needed to be interpreted. These were real events, clear, precise. And they were all scheduled to happen in a single month, June 2025. Jesus said to me, in a voice that used no sound, 4 events, 4 signs. Humanity needs to know, and you will tell. At that moment, I understood. Everything we know is about to be shaken. Nothing will stay the same. And what I saw next changed everything. Forever. Suddenly, as if I had been pulled out of my own being, I was taken to a place impossible to describe. It was like looking at Earth from the outside, but not like we see in NASA photos. It was alive. I was breathing. It was pulsating. Lines of golden energy began to emerge, sprouting from seemingly random points. These lines came from places no one would imagine. A hut in the interior of Africa, an orphanage in Mexico, an isolated cell in a prison in California, a classroom in India, a humble little house in the interior of Brazil. And these lines connected like a neural network, like arteries of light, creating a spiritual map of the planet. And then I understood. Without him saying a word, the truth was imprinted within me. The awakening has begun. It was the first sign, An invisible spiritual hunger was spreading through humanity. People who had never thought about God, who had never prayed, who had always lived on autopilot, they began to feel an emptiness that nothing in the world could fill. I saw young people, until then skeptical, looking up at the night sky, feeling something they couldn't explain. I saw children closing their eyes and, without knowing why, mumbling words they didn't even understand. I saw successful businessmen feeling a knot in their chest, a suffocating anguish, realizing that money, status, power were not going to save anyone from what was to come. And at the same time, the darkness reacted. I saw faces distorted with fear, anger, despair. People attached to the system's lies, chasing pleasure, distractions, anything that would numb this internal restlessness. But it was useless. The light was expanding, and with it the truth. There was no more escape. Jesus spoke, again within me. This is the first sign, a hunger for the truth. Many will listen, but not all will accept. And at that moment, I felt a weight on my chest, as if the earth was about to break. The spiritual pressure was suffocating, like a dam with cracks growing, on the verge of rupture. The month of June 2025, the month when billions will have to choose, awaken, or be lost forever. But there was no time to process. Before I could fully understand, a force pulled me into the next vision, and what I saw was much worse, much more real, much scarier. Without warning, I was thrown into a new scenario. Was no longer seeing golden lights nor power lines. Now it was darkness, cold, dense, heavy. And then I saw cities, big cities, New York, London, Tokyo, Sydney, Sao Paulo, the whole world, stopping. But it wasn't an explosion. It wasn't a natural disaster. It was something much quieter and much more devastating. The system was breaking down. Imagine an engine running without oil. It grinds, strains, tries, until it simply stops. That's exactly what I saw. A worldwide economic collapse. And it wasn't in the distant future. It was June 2025. First came the banks. Red screens on the stock exchanges. Branches were closing their doors. I saw people running around desperately trying to withdraw money, but nothing came out. I saw a woman in tears at an ATM, punching the screen as if that would solve it. I saw a father trying to trade in his own car for 2 bags of food, and nobody accepted them. The supermarkets, empty. The pharmacies, looted. Gas stations with mile-long lines, until there was no more fuel. Giant companies crumbling like houses of cards. I saw investors crying, tearing up documents. I saw people who used to lavish luxury, now walking barefoot holding a piece of bread as if it were gold. And then, Jesus spoke, not in anger, not in judgment, but with a firmness that went through me like fire. The second sign has come. The fall of the system, not to destroy, but to expose, to purify, to reveal where men's trust lies. At that exact moment, I saw something that left me speechless. Amidst the chaos, points of light appeared, groups coming together, neighbors who had never spoken to each other, now sharing what they had. I saw garages turning into community kitchens. I saw squares turning into vegetable gardens. I saw people helping each other, not out of obligation, but for love, for survival, for humanity. And I understood the collapse was not the end. It was a divider. Those who built their lives on money, power, and ego were falling apart. But those who anchored themselves in love, compassion, and faith began to flourish in the midst of chaos. Jesus spoke again. And this time his voice seemed to echo throughout the universe. False security will fall, and only those who are anchored in the truth will remain. But before I could absorb that, I was sucked into the next vision. And if you think you've seen it all, you're very, very wrong. When I thought nothing could be more intense, I was thrown into the third vision. I was no longer seeing the world from above. Now I was inside, in the middle of the people. But it wasn't just one place. It was like being in several places and at the same time. I saw a wooden church in the mountains of Virginia. I saw a simple tent in the middle of the Somali desert, a cramped apartment in Detroit, an abandoned school in India, a warehouse in the suburbs of São Paulo, and in all these places the same phenomenon. People on their knees, face down, crying, screaming, pleading. But it wasn't despair, it was surrender. I saw men who had never prayed, praying. I saw young people throwing their cell phones on the floor as if they suddenly realized that they would never fill the void they felt. I saw criminals inside prisons with tears in their eyes whispering words they didn't even know, but that came from their souls. And then I felt him again, Jesus. But this time, not as visible light, not in physical form, but as presence. He was in every breath, in every tear, in every choked word. It was as if the air was charged with him. And then the revelation came, direct, strong, cutting like a sword. This is the third sign, the fire of repentance, the hidden revival. Not by churches, not by men, but by my spirit, and no one can stop it. I saw something absolutely shocking. Clubs being emptied, with young people on their knees on the floor, crying. I saw parties being interrupted, not by the police, but by something supernatural. A presence that took over the environment, making people simply, if they break. I have seen teachers stop in the middle of a lesson, simply drop what they were teaching, look up at the ceiling, and start praying without knowing exactly why. I have seen children teaching their own, parents to kneel down and cry out. I have seen couples on the verge of divorce, hugging each other, asking for forgiveness without understanding how that weight was lifted from their hearts. And the voice of Jesus echoed in me, stronger than ever. They will search, some out of fear, some out of love. Many will surrender, others will mock. But the fire has already begun, and nothing, absolutely nothing, I can stop it. And I understood, like an explosion inside my spirit. This is not an event, it is a preparation. The whole world was being aligned for what was yet to come. And just when I thought it couldn't get any more supernatural, the sky, literally, opened up. And what I saw will never leave my soul. When I realized it, everything around me started to shake. The floor disappeared, the walls disappeared, the air turned to light. I was no longer on Earth. I was not in any physical place. It was in space, in the very fabric of the universe. But it was not a space like we see in films or documentaries. No, this was alive. Each star seemed like a beating heart. Each planet seemed to breathe. Entire galaxies moved like gears, waiting for something. Something big, something that was about to happen. And then, I saw. The sky began to move, but not like clouds or storms. It was something much more supernatural, as if the constellations themselves had received an order. Stars began to align, drawing shapes that no science could ever predict. It was a map, a code, a message. And in the middle of this impossible spectacle, lines of blue fire appeared. Rivers of golden light crossed the universe. Giant circles formed between planets. Everything was perfectly synchronized. And then, I am. It wasn't a sound like the ones we hear here. It was as if every particle, every atom, every piece of creation was singing, vibrating, communicating. It was a sound that did not come from outside, but from within. That did not reach the ears but invaded the soul. And in that moment I understood without needing any words. This is the fourth sign. Heaven will speak, and no one will be able to ignore it. I saw people all over the world just stopping. Workers dropping tools, drivers braking in the middle of the road, children dropping toys, everyone looking up. The entire planet in complete silence. Nobody ran, nobody screamed, nobody ran away, because everyone, deep down, knew. The spirit of every human being recognized that was God. It was a call, it was a warning, and the message did not come in words, but as an overwhelming certainty in the chest of every human being who looked at that sign in the sky. Time is up. Now is decision. Now is separation. Now is preparation. The most terrifying is that no one could pretend they weren't seeing. No one could say it's a coincidence, it's a natural phenomenon, it's imagination. Because that was supernatural, absolute, unquestionable. And when that sign was completed, I understood. June 2025 will not be just any month. It will be a watershed in human history, before and after. And those who are not prepared simply will not be able to handle what comes next. But that wasn't all. Because suddenly, as if the entire universe took a deep breath, one last revelation began to form. And this was the most devastating of all. When that cosmic signal began to fade, I thought it was all over, that this would be the end of the experience, but no. In fact, it was just the beginning of the most shocking revelation of all. Suddenly, I found myself in a place that it was neither earth, nor space, nor sky, nor time. It was another plan, a field of light. An infinite space with no floor, no walls, no ceiling. And there, they were. Thousands, maybe millions. Beings that shone with a light that didn't hurt the eyes but warmed the soul. Some seemed ordinary, like any person you'd pass on the street. A black woman in simple cleaning clothes. A young Asian man holding a worn Bible. An elderly man, toothless, smiling as if he carried the universe itself in his chest. And then, without having to ask, I knew who they were. The intercessors, the invisible ones, the secret pillars of the world. Jesus was among them, not above, not separate, with them, together, present, part of this army of light. And at that moment, a crushing truth pierced me like a fiery arrow. It was they. It was they who sustained the world until now. Each prayer said in the silence of a room. Every tear shed without anyone seeing. Every act of forgiveness, every gesture of love that never appeared in the newspaper, never went viral, never was seen. All of this supported the planet. They weren't presidents. They weren't millionaires. They weren't influencers. They weren't celebrities. True power has never been with them. True power has always been with the humble, with those who pray, with those who love, with those who never gave up believing in the invisible. And then Jesus looked at me, not with words, not with sound, but as if his very existence poured into me a wave of energy, of love, of truth that I will never ever be able to forget. And he said to me, straight to the soul, they have held out until now, but now it is your turn. You saw, you know. Now, you are a witness. At that moment, I felt something impossible to describe, an honor so great that it brought my entire spirit to its knees, and at the same time, a burden, a calling, a responsibility, because I understood that that vision was not just for me. It was a message to the world, and to you who are listening now. And that's when the atmosphere began to shake, as if the universe itself was vibrating, pulsing. Something was about to happen. Something that wasn't just a vision. It was the sound of the end itself, the sound of the final decision. And at that moment, it started. When I thought nothing could be more impactful, the entire universe began to vibrate. It wasn't a physical vibration. It wasn't an earthquake. It was as if the very fabric of existence was singing. And that melody, it didn't come from outside. It came from inside. At first, it sounded like a distant sound, like an echo coming from the stars, a whisper that grew. But little by little, I realized that they weren't just sounds. They were voices. They were prayers. They were screams. They were whispers, from all places, from all languages, from all times. Imagine millions of trails of golden light rising from the earth to the sky. Each of these trails was a prayer. A God, help me. A Lord, do not abandon me. A thank you. A forgive me. And they didn't disappear. They didn't get lost. They had shape, color, and sound. And then, I started listening the answers. I saw waves of light coming down, touching lives, healing, restoring, protecting, and I realized something that made me cry with a strength I didn't even know existed within me. The whole world is sustained by that invisible sound. Jesus spoke within me with a voice that seemed to penetrate not only my spirit, but all the layers of creation. This is the sound that will sustain the world in what is to come. Whoever aligns with it will remain. Whoever ignores it will be swallowed up. And I saw entire cities plunged into suffocating darkness, places where there was no more prayer, where no one sought anymore, where the sound of heaven had been silenced. And in those places the darkness was physical, thick, like spiritual smoke that squeezed, suffocated, paralyzed. But I also saw islands of light, small groups, families, children, elderly, young people, people from all over the world on their knees praying. And from these people, waves of energy exploded, living light, a barrier that hell itself could not cross. And then Jesus revealed something that shook me to the core of my soul. When the collapse comes, when the awakening confounds the world, when the sky shows its signal, it will be this sound, this spiritual sound, that will define who stands and who falls. It wasn't money. It wasn't knowledge. It wasn't weapons. It was the tuning in to the sound of heaven, the prayer, the repentance, the truth in the heart. And then, I saw something that took the breath away from my soul. The clock, the heavenly clock. It didn't count seconds. It had no hands. It pulsed, measuring choices, measuring hearts. And it was almost zero. And in that moment, everything went silent. And what came next was the final revelation, the scariest, the most real, the most urgent. The silence was deafening, a silence that does not exist on earth. It was the silence before the last trumpet, before the verdict, before the end of time. And then I saw, in the midst of that living void, a structure appeared that was impossible to describe with human words. A clock, but not like ours, without hands, without numbers. He looked like he was made of pulsating light, living energy, like gears of liquid gold turning in rhythm with the universe. Every beat felt like the very heart of God. And when I looked closer, I realized he was almost zeroing, almost. It wasn't a clock that counted seconds, or minutes, or hours. It was a clock that measured hearts, consciences, choices. With each person who repented, a gear turned slower. Time stretched out. But with each act of denial, of pride, of rejection of the light, he accelerated. And then I saw crowds running, desperate, knocking on doors that wouldn't open, people screaming, crying, clinging to each other, trying to escape from something invisible but absolutely real. The collapse, the emptiness, the fear took over. On one side, those who were lost, running, fleeing, begging, but it was too late. On the other side, I saw small groups sitting with their eyes closed, some on their knees, others standing, others holding hands, all in absolute silence, listening to the sound of heaven, and above them, a supernatural peace, a light that no darkness could penetrate. And then the truth dawned on me like a bolt of lightning. The time that remains is no longer measured by the clock of the earth, nor by governments, nor by economics, nor by science. Time, now, is spiritual. Jesus spoke again, his voice within me louder than any sound I had ever heard. June 2025 is not a fluke on the calendar. It is a watershed, a gateway, a point of no return. Those who understand will align. Those who ignore will be swallowed. Up when I saw the clock, ticking, and with only one beat left, just one. The next turn could be the last. And that's when I understood what almost made me faint, if a soul can faint. Every prayer postpones. Every choice for the light secures. Every act of love, of repentance, of seeking, buys time. But every rejection accelerates. Every hardened heart pushes the needle forward. And then Jesus showed me, the decision is not in the sky. It is here, in each of us, now. And when that truth burned inside me, the clock vibrated. Something was about to happen. Something that would close this cycle forever. And I wasn't ready for what was coming next. When that celestial clock ticked, I felt a force pulling me. It wasn't a hand. It wasn't gravity. It was purpose. As if the universe itself was pulling me back, but not to life, for the truth, for the mission. And then a question began to echo within me. It wasn't something I was thinking about. It was something that my own spirit was screaming. Why? Why me? Why did I see this? Why me? I'm not a pastor, I'm not a saint, I'm nothing. And it was at that exact moment that once again he appeared. Jesus. But this time, not as a distant light, nor as a diffuse presence. He was in front of me, so close it felt like I could touch him. But there was no flesh. There was no matter. There was essence, truth, love, pure holiness. It was everything I had ever looked for without knowing I was looking for it. And then, he replied. But not with ordinary words, not with sentences, not with sound. It was as if reality itself would bend toward my soul and say to me without voices, "You were chosen, because the world listens to the unlikely, the forgotten, the discredited." At that time, my whole life flashed before me, all the times. I cried in the silence of the bathroom, hidden from everyone. All the screams I let out in traffic in the early hours of the morning, asking why. Every secret thought, every pain, every loneliness, everything. He saw. He was there. He was always there, even when I thought no one cared. And then Jesus showed me faces, thousands of faces, men, women, young people, old people, children, people from all over the planet, people I had never seen in my life. And all of them were connected to me, and a revelation exploded inside me like liquid fire. They will hear you. It doesn't matter if it's a video, an audio, a text, a click, a message. They will hear you, because this is not your message, it's mine. And that's when I understood. What I saw was not a punishment. It was not a sentence. It was an invitation, a warning, one last chance, one last trumpet before the clock in heaven strikes 0. And then he said to me, without words but etched into my soul, as if carved in fire, light and sound, all at the same time, speak, show, alert, and most of all, love, because now, time is up. And in that moment, the light field began to disappear. The sky, space, everything was sucked away, and an indescribable force began to pull me back to my body. But before that happened, Jesus looked straight into my soul and said the last thing I will never forget. When that force started pulling me back, everything around me seemed dissolve. The light, the infinite field, the voices, the sound of the sky, the clock itself, everything was going out, as if the entire universe was closing the curtains. But in the midst of this collapse of reality, he didn't disappear. Jesus stayed, looking at me, not with eyes, with existence itself, with a presence so overwhelming, so full of love, of truth, of mercy that my entire soul felt like it was going to shatter and at the same time be rebuilt. And then it was that he said, the last sentence, the sentence that changed everything, the sentence that I will never, never forget. The clock in heaven doesn't measure seconds, it measures choices. And now, it's resetting. These words were not just heard, they were imprinted, engraved, eternal marks on my spirit, like fire, like light, like solid sound, like something that no time, no man, no force can ever erase. At that moment, everything started to accelerate. Saw both worlds at the same time, the spiritual and the physical. On one side, that heavenly sound, that living vibration, that fabric of love, light, and truth. On the other, the reality of earth, the noise of cars, the smell of asphalt, the sirens, my body, motionless, lifeless, pulseless. And then, a shock, a kind of explosion of light that wasn't light. It was life. I felt my spirit being pulled, stitched back into my body, as if every cell, every molecule, every little piece of me was being reconnected, and suddenly, I took the biggest breath of my life. My eyes flew open, my vision was blurry, but I could hear the voices. He's back. Oh my God, he's back. But at that moment, I knew that the one who opened his eyes was no longer Lucas, who entered that experience. Something inside me had died forever, and something much bigger. He was born. I didn't come back with superpowers. I didn't come back with any magic formula, but I came back with something that today is rarer than any treasure. Conviction. Conviction that June 2025 will be the biggest watershed in human history. Conviction that what I saw is not a possibility. It is not a maybe. It is not a what if. It's real. It's certain. It's marked. And it's at the door. 4 signs, 4 trumpets, 4 divisors, and humanity is now, at this very moment, living the last beats of the spiritual clock. And if you think this is just a video, a story, any old report, you are betting your soul on the biggest mistake of your life. The clock in heaven does not measure seconds, measure choices, and he is zeroing. If you like this beautiful spiritual testimony, leave a like, comment your impressions, subscribe to the channel, and don't forget to activate the notification bell to watch each new video and help us spread this message to a greater number of people. Until next time.